For the longest time, we've seen mobile phones get more expensive with so-called flagship phones. Now, this trend started off with Apple, right? And it wasn't really a fantastic thing for consumers. What the industry was trying to do was it was trying to cram as much new technology into a phone and then charge exorbitant prices for it. Now, for the Apple fan in me, I've actually enjoyed all the new technology that's been put into iPhones. And a lot of the time, I get a lot of shit from my friends because I'm an Apple fan. They would tell me that Android is better. They would say, you know what, Android phones out there have better cameras, have better charging, they're always ahead of the curve. And for most of the time, it's right until the next flagship from Apple comes along and just blows it out of the water, especially the latest release of the iPhone 11 Pro. And that particular latest installment was fantastic, right? A lot of the hardware was just unbelievable. The camera was great, the hardware was great, and it's synonymous with Apple's brand as producing a great mobile device. But all that has just changed. Before we continue, like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you can get updated every time there's new videos out. Thank you. Now, for those of you who don't know, Apple just released the iPhone SE. Now, usually people will say, that's the cheap iPhone. You know, you get that iPhone if you don't want the higher spec and you just want a cheap iPhone just so that you can show around that you have an iPhone. That's not the same tactic that Apple took around with this particular release of the iPhone SE. In fact, they have crammed as much new technology into this iPhone SE as they could, and then it went further. They actually priced it low. So low, in fact, that most Android detractors who are always saying, I will never go for iPhone, now have very little reason to be upset with Apple because they've given you the best of what they could put together and they gave it to you at a very cheap price. Now, to be very clear about what this cheap price is, the only way that I can show you is directly on their website when you compare the different mobile phones side by side.
Alright, so now we're going to compare exactly what we see from the Apple website, right? And we've got the iPhone 11 Pro, iPhone 11, and the iPhone SE, the second generation, the one that we're talking about today. But we need to get a comparison, right? We need to see what kind of new tech it is. So let's go down the line. And unfortunately, even the XS Max is not available at authorized retailers, so we're going to go to the iPhone XR. So we're going to take a look at what they actually put in this phone. Now, this is $649 against $979, and I'm going to stack it against the iPhone 11 Pro. In terms of screen size, that's fine. It's understood that this is a smaller chassis, smaller screen, that's fine. This is the same aluminum design, as you can see, the same 12 megapixel camera. You've got FaceTime HD and True Depth, that's fine as well. There's no Face ID, but this is the big change. Apple gave it the A13 chip. It didn't even put it for the iPhone XR. Okay, now in terms of everything else, it's about the same as the iPhone 8, which is about 9 hours, 10 hours, doesn't make a difference because it's almost exactly the same. And that's not what we're comparing today. We're not comparing specs, we're comparing worthiness of that price. Water resistance is there, so that's great. If somebody is using it and goes to the beach, it'll be just fine. It's got it in 256 gigabytes. Okay, the XR doesn't have that. And if you go down the line, almost every other item is almost exactly the same as the iPhone XR. So what you are actually getting is actually a better iPhone for a lot cheaper. Sure, you don't get most of it, but you get what you actually need, and that's the most important thing, right? So if I want portrait, I can get it, right? So I'm just going to go quickly. Let's just go and look at the iPhone here and learn more about the big things that people are definitely going to look at, right? So this is Apple's website again, and what we want to see, that's all the fantastic Apple marketing. Got the A13 chip, Yep, that's all great. Great power. Yep, there you go. This is the one that's the killer. For $649, you are going to be able to shoot in portrait mode, and you're going to be able to adjust the blur to get that bokeh effect. This is what most people are going to want, and this is what Apple gave them. That is a huge departure from what Apple usually functions from, which is I will tell you what it's worth and you just have to buy it at the price that I set. Now, just to give you an idea, Singtel has already started taking pre-orders, right? And it's going to cost you an upfront fee of $100 to get the biggest size of the iPhone SE. And that's no joke. If I want the smallest one, I pay $0. If I want a 128, I pay $0. A lot of people are going to go for this phone, especially for the Singtel plan, right? So let's see, StarHub also just announced it. And if you get the iPhone SE with their lowest tier plan, which is this one right here, it's going to cost you $87. That is a huge deal. That's a steal. Everybody can now say that they can actually afford an iPhone. That is amazing.
Now, Apple has always set the trend, but and especially with the trend of mobile phones getting more expensive, that hasn't changed for a very long while, except this year it just went way off track. What is their plan? I'm thinking Apple actually sees something being problematic in the market in the future. A lot of people are not going to have disposable cash, or they're just going to hoard it, or their phones are going to be so fantastic they're just not going to upgrade to the next flagship. But they also want a different piece of the pie. They are now after all that market that has usually been an Android turf, because they couldn't afford an iPhone. But now you're getting one of the best cameras, you're getting one of the best chipsets that's out there in a hardware piece that is fantastic, and you're getting the Apple ecosystem. That is a whole new level of change, and I'm really excited. Everyone is going to be able to use this thing. Granted, yes, there are certain things that they didn't give us. For example, they didn't give us the full load of the cameras, and they don't have to. That's not the purpose of this phone. Most people are just going to use the phone for daily things, taking pictures of their babies, taking photos in everyday situations. But you don't need that full power that's available in the iPhone 11 Pro or the iPhone X. So that begs the question, is this a good move for Apple? I honestly think so. Apple is now on set to take on the lower tier, well, I wouldn't call it the lower tier market, I would call it the lower market, because now they can afford to. They're going after this market because that leads them on to things like the iPad, things like the MacBook Air, things that hopefully like the iMac or the iMac Pro, and these are all generational increases. And the people who are going to buy this iPhone SE are the young now, and they are going to be the Android users who never had a reason to buy an iPhone because it was overpriced. No longer is. It would be people who always thought you could only get those kind of specs in a cheaper price range with an Android. No longer the reason. There is no reason that anyone would actually want to skimp on this iPhone SE. This is a new trend, and I think Apple is definitely on track to really understand the market, because they've made a lot of wise decisions lately with regards to its keyboards, with regards to its Pro devices, with its MacBook Air, with its MacBook Pro. And now I think it's gonna hit a home run with the iPhone SE. And I couldn't be prouder to be an Apple fanboy right now. I think they've really gotten into their groove, and those Android devices, those flagships, they just don't look as nice anymore, do they?